Today, gonna just kind of work through a couple tools I've been working on and some requests that people have had. Hopefully, nothing too nothing too serious. I just wanted to kind of test a few things and show an easy way to create transactions. I guess with in this case it'll be with Kadena.js, but it's meant to take a list of people that you want to pay and essentially pay them out. So we'll get to that. I'm going to turn on some music and get my screen shared. Let's see here. Perfect. All right. And with this, the idea is just a super simple way to I don't know, enable your website or as an individual to be able to quickly use things like this. And it's not there's probably other ways to handle this, but what I wanted to show was like the simplest form of uh, how to create or craft a Pact transaction, but not in a technical term. So I'll share kind of what that means. Check this out on YouTube. Streaming live. All right. And anybody joining, I'm trying to boost, I guess, Twitch, but more specifically, our YouTube to get more followers, so or subscribers in this case. So if anybody wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate it. Hey, Tori, welcome to our 3 o'clock nonsense. So I think you'll probably recognize this one. So this one could be Tori, and then we're just gonna keep doing it. And this one's because Hank will probably join, and then for trouble, yeah, we'll do 3. So this is to split a payment amount. So let's say we want to pay these people 10 KDA. So I'm going to send it from my bank account, and that'll be my key. So this is just like if you were building a transaction, you would have to have all this information. So you would pull this from your wallet, and in pulling it from your wallet, it would essentially fill all this out for you. So ideally, I'm going to publish this code to GitHub. What you could do is you could take this and simply take the HTML that I made and drop it right into whatever coding language you like. I did it in HTML because I find that it takes like 5 minutes. So it's kind of fun to be able to go through these things. And so you can specify if I want to send this on chain 1, and then we specify the network. That's it. So this should not be that difficult. If you can, I mean, this is self-explanatory. This is self-explanatory. This is probably pretty self-explanatory. The public key is probably confusing for some, but again, we would want to pull that from a wallet. So any of my test sites that I've ever shown, I generally feed all that info, so we would know who it's coming from. And then we generate code. So this is interesting. So the way Pact works is we have to create our transaction. So we need code. So that's what this is doing for us. So this is going to give us 4 transfers. Oh, it added a phantom one. I must have added something. I'll have to go back and look at what I did. I must have added like a phantom line here. Let's see. There we go. I'm like, it just looked too good. So and then we'll do some rounding on this too. So the idea is you could take this and feed this into your own function. And so you would put in whatever amount you want here. We can just do this so that it looks cleaner. So everybody's going to get 4 KDA. And this is all you need. Network, set network ID. So it tells us we're on mainnet. This is who's sending it, which is us. This is 600 is 10 minutes. So whatever this, I'm not going to try to do it in my head. I just use 7,200 a lot. How's how much gas we're willing to spend. This is the low gas price that we're willing to send it at. You could use a gas station in here if you really wanted to. I'm not interested in showing that. And this is all your capabilities that you would need to perform the transfer. So you would take that. Hey, Hawk. You would take that. And let's get us an example. I'm going to open something real quick. Is anybody listening? Is there music playing right now? I can't hear it if there is. Let's see. GitHub. I'm going to find this. So I never can find what I want when I'm on here. It's like it never ever fails. My Mac is sometimes not the easiest. All right, Cadena mainnet test. Okay, so we have a worker bot. All right. So we would take that code. We would build. So this is a tip which uses a transfer. A little more confusing because it's going to say if KDA, then this. Otherwise, we're going to default to this. And this should actually be like that. And so if you look at what that example showed, let's shrink this so we can see them both kind of side by side. So we have our Pact builder, which is right here. So we're going to call it async function transfer, which we would feed in like the list. We would feed all that stuff in because we wouldn't want this all dynamic, right? And so this would be a little bit different, but you could technically run this as it is. And so we have, this was a little, I shouldn't have used this as an example. I knew I was going to get myself in trouble, but the only thing we might add is our key set, but I don't think we need it for a transfer. So really what we would do is we would take all this code right here, drop it right into our application, right? We could drop it right in here and test it. And then we go through. And so this is what I use to sign with Wallet Connect. Yeah, I'll answer questions. It's it's a little chaotic sometimes. I kind of get on a tangent, but I made this. I wonder if the people who've asked for this will join. But somebody was asking like, how hard is it? Yeah, when Aaron Pump soon, hopefully. Somebody was asking, how do I send a transaction, like a payment transaction to a list of people? And I'm like, it's actually really easy, but there's like 1,000 ways you can do it. And so me being the smart ass that I am, decided, what would be fun is why don't I just make an HTML page this afternoon that creates a transaction that you can go run. So you could just drop this code in your app. Well, like I would just drop this in my app. I might make this like an actual, like use a transaction builder as like a step 2. So what this would show you is if you're going to use Java, I could send you the exact block of code you would need to run in your app to perform this. So if it's difficult, people shy away from it. But if I feel like if I publish this and let people see what I'm doing to build it, hopefully that kind of helps, because this stuff is it's not hard. You just got to know. You got to know what you're looking for. And so code wise, like I said, it's a very simple HTML page. None of this is really all that important. It's just getting our data in here, and then we're going to read it from our form. And the most interesting piece in here is probably the code section and the signer section. So this is what confuses most people when we talk about capabilities. And it's even more confusing when I start adding multiple capabilities, and then I have to explain you can only pass gas once. Yeah, if you wanted to do an airdrop, you could absolutely use this for an airdrop. And initially when I did this, I actually had code. I want to be careful I don't share the wrong stuff, but okay. So here's what I built for royalties. So anybody can run this because you can't input anything. So there's a table in my contract that stores payer 1, payer 2. You could do payer 1 string, payer 2 string, and do it that way. But then anybody could steal my funds, right? So I left it because if people want to if they want to distribute royalties to a group of people, you can make a quick little, basically escrow contract, which allows you to do that. And the other thing that would be really cool is we could do this. So payees as a list. And so we would just basically like map over something. Is that really what it? No. We could just map over this list. I actually wouldn't do it this way. Usually I would have this in another function that runs into this function, so we're only running that list once, if that makes sense. It's just easier logic and it breaks it out a little bit better. And I may do it. The reason I don't want to show it in here because I think it's a bad idea. But that's what you could do. You could take that and essentially take the approach. Won't change all that much. However, so like, okay, so this is the wallet that it's coming from. These are our payers. And then the interesting thing when you use, when you're using a Pact to do this, and I'm giving it a dynamic list, I don't have to stack my transactions like this. I can map over that list and pay each person. So it's just one install capability, one coin.transfer, or whatever you could do. Fungible for those who like that. Fungible transfer, and then just specify. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. This is way more overkill than needed. This is a simple way to handle a potentially complex problem. Yeah, you can only pass gas once. The capability onion. Yeah, I don't know. I always just do it this way. I think I have a... I have a little trouble with doing this stuff in HTML. Yeah, and I guess you could. I know this works, so I guess for me it's like, why change what's not broken? But if you look at, I'll show you an example. Okay. So this is an example of, let's see here. All right, so this is just a function I was testing. It's a dirty function, but it works. So when you run this, right, it's a simple cap structure. So this is what it would look like this. So all I'm doing in my other function is this spam. So it's really easy. So to me, I always just go with simple. Yeah, I just go with simple like this. So this is the structure for Cadena.js. So you can do it. You can do it in you see nested caps. So explain to me what. So with capability, I'm confused. Like, do you have like an example? I don't know what. I probably have another example of this that's better. Defund pay. Yeah, like when you have the admin. Oh, so like compose. So you compose your capability. Is that what you're talking about when you? I don't know where my scroll bar went off to. Here. So you would have ops, and then you would basically compose. I would never do that, but MFA. Yeah, so okay, we can talk about that. So let's talk about that for a second. So in our isUser function. So let me see what that cap looks like. I don't even know if I have it in here anymore. isUser? Okay. So let's say I want to be able to get isUser and say I have access to it. And then I want to do something like capability. And yeah, let's say we wanted to compose the wallet capability. So this is my contract. It doesn't matter. I can use this ID. And so what this will do is this will put my wallet into scope. And so now when I run a function, when I run this function, let's say MFA payment calls new function AE. So what you would do is defund. Let's see what this says. So you could do something like require capability. And you could use isUser, or what did we just create? isUser wallet ID. So we should be able to pass wallet ID. And then we can do stuff. And then we can do stuff. Stuff like drain our account. So that's just like one very stupid, simple example. I actually use, generally in my contracts, I use this a lot. I use it a lot. And if you're gonna do something like a capability that's true, so wallet is true, that means you can't call it into scope unless somebody calls it into scope, and that's what the compose does. So you could have isUser, right, does something, but you can also piggytail off that and use it to compose more capabilities, which allow you to do more things. And it creates kind of a barrier to be able to call certain things into scope. Like if I don't want you to ever be able to call wallet directly, like in the wallet is how we pay people, right, from our contract. So if I don't want you to be able to call that directly, I can compose that. And then you can't get to it without going through the regular process. And it allows us to break things up. And Steven, I'm assuming that's kind of one example. I'm sure if there's another good one, I'm happy to talk about it. I feel like it's confusing. I think it's really powerful though. And you'll notice, let me undo all those things I just did, but you'll notice in my wallet function, let me fix, what did I change? Is user. So you'll notice, okay, that's good. When you go down to my wallet capability, you can't just like pull this up. On some level, I'm requiring you to pass some kind of test to get to these things. And I like these for easy guards, like this whole process. So if you had a contract that you took payments in and you wanted to take like 5 different types of payments in there and have them separated out in 5 different tables, you could create a wallet using this ID string and create a unique wallet for each person. And essentially, go back up here and where we do coin.transfer. So transfer. Okay, so I'm using fungible here. So when you're doing these things, you'll see we have to be able to call our wallet into scope. And yeah, this is one of my test contracts, so I don't actually have the enforce in here. So when we call this into scope, I wouldn't actually call wallet. I would call is user so that I validate that they're the user, and then they'll be able to acquire the capability. So that's kind of cool. I'm curious. Governance tree. Yeah, and the interesting thing. So when you start talking about managed capabilities, that's when that's kind of cool. So that's kind of what we're doing here is you create a function that calls you'll see this in the debit and credit. So if you look at some contracts, you'll see def cap transfer, and then this is sender, receiver, I always spell receiver wrong, an amount. Yeah. So that's actually not right. So what we do here is, and then it's the amount, and then we have a transfer manager. And then here, we're going to do something really cool. So this is proposed capability. Debit is the sender. Yeah, debit is the sender. And we're going to compose credit is the recipient. And so, I meant receiver, but it's fine either way. And so, when you call transfer into scope, it's interesting because you cannot call debit and credit into scope by themselves. You just simply cannot. And when you think about what this is doing for you, I think it's kind of unique in the sense that you can have a contract, you can have a capability, and then you can like second, and you're saying nested, which is absolutely the right way to look at that. You can nest all these things inside. And it's like to me, it's like a triple enforced. So the more you want to be careful with these two, because you never want to compose something and get, into issues with that where you shouldn't be, right? We don't want to compose somebody into an area they're not supposed to be. But if you build these expecting that they'll only ever be able to be called into scope when there's another piece satisfied, I think it's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. You don't reassign them. You call them into scope so they can be used. And if you tried to do in your code, if you tried to run the debit or credit function, it would fail. You can't run them. They just simply will not allow it. The only way they allow it is if a higher capability calls them into scope first. It's like a safety net almost. I was gonna look at it anyway. I think there's another. I had another cool example. Let me get rid of this. Show something real quick. So I made a. Let me see if I can find it. Caps. I made something that I thought was cool. REPL. Verify. Okay. I'm going to show this in 1 second. Just make sure nothing's on here that I can't show. So this would be like a load mod5.REPL. Pact. Load. Okay, cool. So this is safe to run. And if you want to take it like really cool, I've been talking about this a lot lately. So if you really want to like amplify what you're doing, you can build an interface. And so I made a simple calculator app just as an example. And it's good because we can verify things against it very easily. And it's something that people would recognize. So you want to store a number value, you call it something, and then you store a value. You want to add, you add. Now, if you import this or you implement this into your code, this schema is now being used at the interface level. So if you had 50 people building a smart contract around an interface, right here, you can't duplicate this in your own code. It will throw an error because it knows the schema is already defined. And then let's say you want to control the input and the output for a function. You have to specify all the types. If you go through your code and you don't match verbatim what these things are doing, it's going to fail on you, which is really good. That's a really good thing. And so what can you do with that? Like, what does it really matter? I think I might have disabled it in here, but what you can do is something even cooler. And that's formal verification, which I think interfaces, capabilities, guards, and formal verification all kind of play a really big role in how to do things the right way. Not necessarily the only way, but maybe the well-structured way. And what's interesting is this does nothing by itself. This is just saying, is this a valid number? So when we feed this property, it has to be greater than 0.0 or equal to 0.0. I could say greater than or equal to, but I didn't on purpose because of how I wanted to evaluate this. And so I built this model into my function to say, is X greater than or equal to 0? Is Y greater than or equal to 0? So what happens is we can verify our contract now. And the way we do that is, I think it's Pact-T, I think. and that is mod 5.repl. Okay, yep, so that's what it is. But I don't want to show it that way. I want to actually load Pact and show an example. So we're gonna load this. Okay, so we verified success. So how do I prove anytime I add a number in here, it must be greater than or equal to 0 for X and for Y, because I want a positive outcome. I always want my number to be positive or 0. So as an example, we could take this out for a second. Let's take our enforce out. It changes nothing about our function. Nothing. It's the same exact function. That's clear. And what we should do is we should get a big error. Because, and this is what I think maybe something that people don't understand about how formal verification actually works. And I'm still learning some of the intricacies of it. I've built some complex models that are just like, I don't know how I would ever achieve this scenario where it's like failing me, but that's why we tested this way, I guess. So it's good. So simply by saying that my enforce statement is gone, it knows now that somebody can cheat. And they can put in a value that's less than or equal to 0. It knows. It just knows that because I told it my rules. I told it that this always must be the case. Always. Without a doubt. And so when you think about like a financial transaction, right? Let's say the balance could never be 0.0. Well, we can eliminate that as a case, right? So what you would do is you would eliminate that, right? And so we don't ever want this to be negative, because we can't send somebody a negative amount unless we're crediting them back something. But even then, I'd be careful of sending it as a negative. So we simply enforce this. I do nothing different other than now it actually is verifying that it can't trick this because I'm enforcing it myself. And so you've got capabilities that do one thing, right? So my calendar capability, I kind of went a little overboard on and said if so enforce 1. So I could put a couple conditions in here, and this is the only thing I'm aware of in Pact, the only function that actually throws an error and lets you continue going. Everything else is a hard stop. If it runs into a condition it doesn't like, it errors. But enforce 1 is like the one thing I can think of that violates that rule, and it's intentionally violating it, right? Because we want to be able to evaluate multiple conditions. And so this is just saying to get the calculator to use it, we need to have our account in the table, or we need to have this key set. So it will evaluate when we run this command. It will evaluate if this is our key set, free.cal, which it's not. Or it will check if this guard matches what's in here for our account. And if it does, it will grant us, where is it? It'll grant us access to this. So I had with capability, and then it was cal, and then their name. And this probably wrapped the whole thing. Oops. So let's move that over. Let's go down. And it should fail now. Or I'm not writing. So what I would do is 3.mod5.add write, and it would be 5.0, 1.0, me. Then it should fail. Yeah, it's not in there. So it's like a simple way to You wouldn't pass a count that way, as just as an example. But that's like the absolute bare minimum you should understand when you're creating functions and building flows within Pact is understand what a guard is, understand what a key set is, understand what his formal verifications and like all, I think all the critical contracts have it. So when you're looking at these and you're like, what is this model? Go look at it. They're perfect examples for you to go in and copy. I mean, I would highly recommend it. If you're gonna build a function, go take what they've others have done and use it in your own contracts. So that's a mouthful, but that's at least my understanding of kind of the best way. I don't know. I don't know, but if I were to pull up, let me pull something up real quick. Oh, and yeah, let me show you one of my testnet contracts. So it's on all chains, but reg. Register. What did I call it? Free dot. Free. I hate when it does this to me. Free dot reg. I don't know, but let me find the code. I'll show you. I wanted to show you it in there, but let me just take a few minutes and I'll show you one that I made. All right, let me just pull it up. I've been working on indexing all the NG stuff, just trying to match up my process and make sure it's all equal. And I found a little issue. Payment. I think it's payment something. Pact. Code. Pact contracts. So payment maybe? Pay process. That's what it is. Let's look at this one. Okay. Pact. So I made my own crazy Def Pact, which would have truthfully been a lot easier. Let me pull up. So I can't see chat. So this would have been a lot easier, honestly, if I would have just created a bunch of functions. But in theory, it's better to do it this way because it's got the rollback stuff. We're dealing with payments. We don't want them stuck forever. And so essentially what you're doing is in step 0, we're actually calling just another function. So we're calling create. So I don't know if I can show all of this, but we're doing defun create. So what you're going to notice is this is the starting function. But what you're going to notice is we require a capability. And I have a model that says you cannot have more than 100 wallets defined. And so when you break down what a Def Pact is, it's just a series of functions and kind of, I think about it as like an orchestrator almost. In that we can bridge what a function is. Let's go back here. And execute it all with safety. And so at the end of this, we're actually feeding a Pact ID, which gets created when this runs. And that's kind of like the critical component as we go through this. And so step 0 simply says, all right, here's some logic. Here's the capability we need. And now we're going to essentially compose a function. Like if you think about it that way, we're composing a function now. We're not, we are, right? We are. And so I added this timeout. I think this is 48 hours. So you can't change this intentionally. You have 48 hours to act on this. If you don't, step 0 with rollback allows you to withdraw within 48 hours. However, if you've already been verified, which is step 1, I know this is a little confusing. This step can happen before this step. Confusing. This is where they get very confusing to me. And I want to be careful how I explain this. But essentially, you register in step 0.1 basically. And let's say in like 5 minutes, you're like, nah, I don't want to pay this. I'm done. I don't want this domain name, for example. I'm going to withdraw my funds and we're going to call bygones be bygones, or let bygones be bygones. But let's say my script is Johnny on the spot and I verify your domain in 9 minutes through this step, which I have a worker bot running 24/7 looking for work. This step is going to actually release your funds to my bank account, and it's going to validate right here. This validate function is actually going to go down and let's find it. There we go. It's actually going to come down here and run and execute this code, which again, we need to require capability because we don't want somebody to be able to call this function into scope without a higher level function composing it. So we really want to protect these things, and that's an easy way to do it. And so it does a few things to check. Have you already verified? Kicks you out. I could actually add if the def pact is closed, which I think it will invalidate you anyways, so maybe I don't need that in here. And then I want to make sure that you're not past the 48 hours. And so that's all these two enforcers are doing. And now my def pact can be complete. I'm updating that this is done. I'm writing a new updating this. And I tried to keep everything as succinct as I could, I guess. And so I broke everything out into side functions. So if we're going to do something, we're going to create a new function to do it. And it just helps. And so when you look at, let's see how many lines of code this contract is. 448 lines of code. All right. The interesting thing, every single function in this contract, except for a couple helper functions, like if you want to check, literally, I treat this like an API. So I make API calls. So it's easy for people to map out. Every single line of code in this contract goes to serving this def pact. It literally is orchestrating my entire contract. Like every function in here is a result of this def pact. And so when you think about like, why do we have these? Why do we use them? I mean, they're very, very powerful for taking like 20 functions and basically building them into Pact ID is your transaction ID at this point. So when you run this, you'll get your transaction key. That's what this is. So now you can take this and use it in the other functions. And I actually store it in a table so that I don't have to have an event listener pick it up. I have an event listener, so it doesn't matter, but like somebody else may not. And if I want to give people a code that they can run, I need to give them code that they can run, right? Not everybody's going to want to set up an indexer, APIs, listeners, real time, a node. That's a lot of work. And so that's probably the longest way I can say it is there's nothing special about a def pact other than these steps. You can actually nest this. So if you wanted to do something on chain 2 and you're on chain 1, you can actually pass data between chains in a yield in a nested def cap, and then you can run a continuation on chain 2, which allows you to finish this command. And so you have the command pre-written, it knows what to do, but you're on chain 1, so you can't execute it on chain 2. What What Pact understands about a Def Pact is I think uh, there's oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It's not the proofs. It's the way it knows how to connect. I can't. I'm drawing a blank. I'm not going to try to waste 20 minutes with my brain not working right now. But essentially, a def pack can start on chain 1. It can complete on chain 2. So you run a continuation command on chain 2. We see that with transfer, create, cross chain transfers. Yeah, but you can also do like yield data chain ID, and it knows to take your data or your function, and it knows what chain it needs to execute it on. So then when you go to that chain, you can execute that code. So that's the one, like, you won't see as many examples of that, but that's probably one of the more obvious use cases for a def pact. This is a payment flow def pact. Nothing more complex than stringing together a bunch of functions. So if you don't want to think about it in like a complex term, step 0.1, execute or run command. Step 0.1, roll back command. Step 1, complete command, if that makes sense. Very simple execution steps. I like these more now that I've done a couple of them, but at first I can tell you it was really confusing. Really, really confusing. So I got like 10 more minutes. So if there's any other questions, I'd rather answer people's questions than otherwise I'm going to add more features to my code generator. And I don't know that I'm going to add much in 10 minutes. But let me see if I can pull it back up. I never remember how to drag my bar across. Oh, Tori, are you gonna start coding yet? When early? Yeah. I think this is so Squeegee's got the pretty version of it. I wanted to show. I got a few minutes. Let me just show. Let me see if this is still running. All right, so this is technically. Oh yeah, it's working. So this is technically new. It doesn't like running on localhost. Sometimes the images get muxed up. But if you look at the Skelly's page, like look at how cool this is. It's all dynamic. Like look at this page is so cool. This icon. And I didn't do so if anybody wants to know the secret, I didn't do anything. I have when I was talking about updating my indexer, I listen for mint events and then I write it to my table. I listen for transfer events, which means somebody purchased or transferred the NFT, and I update the state. When I'm inputting a new NFT, I look for metadata, which is off-chain now. And I actually scrape it I have an IPFS process that scrapes all the metadata and stores it in another table. So I have it all kind of like real time. Yeah, Squeegee did the design for all this. And then that allows me to basically come in here, and for me to enable Skellies, all I had to do was approve their collection. That's it. I have an approval process. So by the time it gets to me, I don't do anything to enable projects to display on here. It just happens once I approve it. It creates a thumbnail of all these. So these are just thumbnails so they load faster. But when you go in here, it knows that this NFT is not just a simple simple thing. And I don't, none of this is manual. This is all automatic. So whatever they give me is what's going to get displayed on here. I thought this was like the perfect example of testing that process and see if it actually really does work, and it does. So I was happy. And then there's, of course, these guys, which I really wish I knew who did this collection, if it's going to load. Really doesn't like, yeah, there we go. So I don't know who did this one, but I like this, and I like this. And I'm like, somebody just tell me and I'd be happy to not promote it, but like talk about it. And yeah, it is. So Davy's got access to the old V1 Wizards, Skelly. There's a couple other projects in there. API, I think Dadbods is in there too. And I haven't updated any of that in like 8 months because I've been working on V2, and right now I'm working on NG to get that in here. And so I even told Davey, like, there's all this new stuff. I think he needs a new endpoint. And so when he's ready, I have like a super lookup endpoint now where you can go and like V2 and G. So here's everything you can do. Is it an approved collection? Which is important because if it's not going to show. Is it one of our top collections? Which means there's activity, and then it rates the activity. Do we want to include sales data? Yes or no? Like, does it have NFTs for sale in the collection? And if it does, what are the last 24-hour stats of sales? So it just compiles all that for you on the fly. And then this allows you to pick. So the reason I did it this way is I could add as many standards in here as I want and not have to touch anything. I just add to the list. And then instead of both, it would be all, essentially. It always defaults to this if it doesn't have the right input. But essentially, you just run this and look, there you go. That's how long it takes to scrape 10 collections or 15 collections between V2 and NG for me. That's it. I mean, that's I'm not going to be able to make it much more efficient than that. So it's got the table, all the tokens in here. Yeah, the search stuff is the coolest though. Like, I haven't updated that one yet, but the search, I don't remember which one's the optimal one, but like, yeah. So that search, so you understand, that search just hit 12 different tables to return this. 12. That was 12 tables. And that's how fast it spits that out. You can't visually see how it takes before the results there. When you do it on, I have a test page. I don't know if it's still there. It might be gone now. Yeah, it's gone. There's a test page where as you type, it's so fast that you almost have to add like a little delay in there, debouncer maybe, and it's just meant to be like, and so what's interesting is I don't know the structure of your metadata, and so I had to really do a lot of logic. This took me a while to make this all automatic, but once I got it, it was pretty easy. I read everything in VS Code. Nothing special. I switched to using GitHub Copilot, and I will never go back, ever. And I will say, if you're trying to build a simple site, do yourself a favor and like try OpenAI's GPT-4 and try Claude 3 Opus and tell me right now that GPT-4 it's not bad, it's great, right? It's a great tool. I use it for like a lot of different things that I do. I've got GPTs that are meant to make my life easy. Uh, Instead of paying for a bunch of software suites to do things, I just let it handle it for me. And I pay a couple dollars a month in API usage. I don't care about that, right? It's the amount of time that I save using it is so exponential that I don't even know if I would want to quantify it. I probably should, but like it's that crazy, and that's why we can do so much, right? And it's not necessarily my favorite thing to use for like coding, but if I wanted to talk to it and have it build something for me, I could walk it through and then tweak it as it goes along and scoot through that really fast. Where I'm going with this though is like if you haven't tried Claude 3, which is I think it's Opus, their new engine, which is like GPT-4 but on steroids. It is incredible at explaining code and generating snips that actually work. And so I've been telling people to use that. Like I'm not recommending you just go and you code with AI because I think it's still not quite there, but it's getting there. And every time these things update, I'm excited to see like, will I be replaced yet so that I can work on other things? That's like, to me, it's a big win. And everybody who comes and asks me, hey, what about this? What about this? I'm like, just go ask it and see what happens. Ask it for a simple HTML page. Ask it for a project structure and then let it build each script for you. I think you would need to know what to ask it, but it's kind of cool. If you wanted to go with the code route, use these things for advertising. GPT-4 or OpenAI is great for that. Ad campaign. They have so many GPTs now. I make a lot of my diagrams in there in Whimsical. So it embedded when it made a mistake. it it does admit when it makes mistakes, which is interesting. So they've been training it well. Yeah, this is what I've been kind of like a side project to get these things up to date. I've been working on uh, the Heron logic, kind of finishing up some of the things that are going on there, and there's going to be a couple things get released for that. Kadena is going to have a couple updates, and we'll have our games will be blended with V2 and NG, but the new Heron game mints your avatar on NG, and so there's a reason. There's a very distinct reason for that. It's not like it's just a policy structure, and some of the things that were put in just make that a little bit easier for me to kind of orchestrate it and keep it all on chain. So I'm curious to see how that works and what people think about it. It's I treat them as the same. My code doesn't care. I'm gonna blend them as much as I can, so you can go from NG to V2, V2 to NG without even knowing you're doing it. So at the end of the day, that's kind of the goal there. And I would do that for any standard. I wanted to do it for V1, but honestly, V1's got so much junk in it. I just hate to pull all that data. It's like crap data in for what reason? Like, let's just get people upgraded. Let's get moving on this, and we'll keep plugging away. So I think this one total include mint. Oh, I see. So you got to include the data. All right. So this is sales activity. So it tells you how much it sold for. It tells you that timestamp is when it sold at. This is who bought it. This is who sold it. This is the NFT, and this is the transaction ID. So I keep all those stats, and they're very, very highly indexed, I should say, so that you can do quick queries and lookups against all this data. And that's what feeds this data here. I think it's blocked on my I think it's blocked here. Maybe it'll compute, but if you look at it on the actual marketplace, it's fast. So I think that's it for me. I like showing this stuff. People don't see always working on stuff. It's just people don't get to see it unless they talk to me, I guess. And it's fun. It's fun to me, and hopefully one of these things will be interesting to people. I still it's kind of sad that my tax tool is the most used thing that I have, but that's probably a good thing. And I'm gonna make this into a couple things, and then this will have to be on our token factor. I think is like an output, hopefully, so you could like that might be a cool plugin to add when Squeegee doesn't kill me for saying that. So, but everybody, I appreciate this. And one thing I would ask anybody who's listening, anyone listening, please subscribe / follow. Please, I don't know if it's please follow us on YouTube at Kadena Art. Yeah, any like I'm trying to get our not socials up, but I'm gonna start posting actual like videos that are well done, not just off the cuff, not just all over the place, but like very, very focused on different things, not just on Kadena, but other things as well. And I like talking about blockchain in general and where tech's going. And I want to do more of that. And so that's what I'm going to be doing a lot of my mornings is splitting coding up and recording videos. And so I'm trying to build up that up. And so anybody who will, I think it's subscribe actually, sorry. Anybody who will help, I appreciate it. It should be free to subscribe on there. But every bit helps. And I'm going to, if it's still slow, I'm probably going to figure out how to do giveaways to get more followers there. So we can get more content out and more people can see it and consume it. And then I find it's more worthwhile to dedicate time to it. So with that, I appreciate everybody and thank you for joining. And I have fun. I'm glad to see so many people joining. Thank you for the questions. That's what I miss a lot is nobody asks me questions. And so it's very helpful. I appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a good day.